Hello everybody, how are you going? And welcome back to some more Historica Canada videos from the same people that make the famous Heritage Minutes, and this is wartime propaganda posters.
You're on a walk and something catches your eye. With the Allied forces at war against Nazi Germany, the posters began to appear.
Right.
Some encourage young men to enlist, others advertise victory bonds. But this poster is a warning. It says that German spies are prowling for information about the Canadian war effort that they can turn into devastating sabotage. It's a warning that there are enemies in your midst.
Right.
But you also feel a kind of pride, a resolve. You realize that you can play a vital role in defeating the enemy. Your sealed lips are a gate between life and death, victory and defeat. This poster is propaganda. It's designed to elicit the response you just had.
Look at that. Before she continues, I just want to take this in. Spreading vital information will undermine our war effort. To do your part in silence. I've never heard of such wartime posters. Like they were saying, there were posters for enlisting. I guess I've also never really heard the entire government bonds or wartime bonds posters being out there as well, which I still don't fully understand. Some people did go on to explain it when we first saw it in the Ambrose Small video, I believe it was, but still, just to be then taking it again and kind of flipping the entire script and going, yes, you aren't in this moment being bombed and you aren't in the middle of the war, you aren't on the front lines, but you are still kind of on the front lines. You're not in the trenches, but you're on the front lines. All information may be relevant. Do your part in silence. I've never heard of such thing, and it looks like they've almost recreated it, as I don't know if that's a original scan. Maybe they've just literally illustrated it, but just to make it high resolution again. But man, just the hand over the ear as well. It's all right there. And it does make me wonder, is this for generic civilians? Like, how much really do the civilians know? Is it because, okay, my brother is out and I received a letter and then I'm talking to this person about it? Is it just generally the construction industry? As I just don't know who it's really targeted at, as surely the people with the most information aren't going to be the ones reading this poster if it's just in some random street. I mean, I guess the illustration does have the 3 men in uniform, but in that regard, I still don't understand, as surely there's not that many people that aren't away from home, so to say. Like, I mean, I guess there's scientific research bases and secret intel bases and all those kind of things, and not everyone is always away. But realistically, the only thing I can think of is the fact that they just don't want this massive rumor mill or truth mill just spilling information out everywhere. You know, very quickly the entire intel can just be, it amidst the entire population.
The Wartime Information Board is the government agency responsible for these posters. The board's mission is to portray the war effort as a chance to build a better future for the country, and most importantly, for individual citizens. Propaganda posters are an effective tool to this end. The board is sending you a powerful message that works into your mind even after a passing glance. This poster has fewer than 15 words, but the design is part of its message. The choice of colors, the placement of figures, even the typeface. These visual elements communicate a web of ideas and stories to support a seemingly simple message. Don't share information about the war. The poster plays on patriotism and fear, easy emotions to manipulate. The Allied men look warm, friendly, honorable. You relate more to them than the blue-toned, sneering image of Hitler that looms over them. You feel patriotic, proud, and inspired to support the fight. The poster has done its work.
Even just seeing all of this imagery, it invokes a certain response, you know, from these ladies just dealing with these artillery shells, and then the poster itself, and even just going back to seeing all the drawing boards. I mean, it just shows you the era and the timepiece, and it really just transfers you back to that mentality so easily. Like, there's a large percentage of the population these days that have nothing to do with World War II or any of the Great Wars. And it's still so burned into people's minds because you hear it in stories and you hear it in history and you hear it in videos like this. You hear it and people are affected by it still to this day. There is so much still caught up in this entire war. And I'm sure that some people do remember seeing this poster. I mean, whether it's this poster exactly or a poster from their own country, whether it's one side or the other, I'm sure everyone was basically putting out the same messaging. And the fact that they can get it so easily and they're trying just to drill it into your mind as best they can to go, your silence is what we need. We are trying to do something here and they are trying to do something here, and whether it's they or them and them or they, it's all the same war effort, isn't it? And it's just incredible that it's kind of a war of graphics designers as well. Like before, you'd think of a typical graphics designers now, it's someone sitting in Photoshop or Illustrator or anything like that, where this is incredible just to be having all of that design and playing on the color scheme and people's emotions and their subconscious all the way back there. I mean, I'm kind of surprised, to be honest, that Hitler is in blue. I was a little bit confused at first going, okay, is the two men that are in blue, are they meant to be the spies? And the guy in green is the Canadian in this circumstance? But then she similarly described in my perception of the entire thing that it was the opposite of that they weren't linked, that they were friendly and they were happy and they were the Allied forces, but then they're not because they're, I don't know, I don't get it. I don't get why Hitler is in blue, and I'm surprised there's no red on this, as red just invokes all of those emotions. And so that's clearly a choice that they made, to not be putting any red on it, but to have blue and green, and black obviously, but blue and green. That's very, I guess, thoughtful colors. And I guess often that's what blue is used for, I've heard. That blue is the long-term color, the thinking color, not the sharp now, don't do this, don't do that color. It's the just leave it there and linger kind of color.
Propaganda has many uses, and not all are for good causes.
Of course.
By digging deeper into the poster's components and what its creators hope to achieve, you can be more aware of how propaganda works before it works on you. Whether it's a propaganda poster in wartime or a story trending on social media, question what you see, hear, and read. Think critically about the messages fighting for your attention.
Oh, just like that, hey? They really know how to spin it, and I do want to know, this came out 4 years ago. It was part of that entire one. They did a bit of a run in October 2019. They just got in before 2020, which is, I don't know if ironic's the right word, but it certainly is very timely, putting these out and just talking about how you shouldn't be listening to every single thing that you see online, and also have a bit of critical thinking and take in from multiple sources, and it can sometimes be propaganda. And there is, propaganda has basically just been transformed into the wording of fake news. There are so many different things and descriptives are now thrown around, but it's all the same thing. And whether it's a poster in the Second World War, the First World War, or now, there are so many different ways that people can get manipulated in this way, and whether that's because they don't want you to do something, or whether that's because they want you to do something. And even with this, enlist, so that's the do this, and I believe all of those posters would have had red on them because they want you to do it right this second, whereas this and this entire schematic here is always in blue. And it's just, it just comes back to what I was saying in terms of the graphic designers are playing wars almost within their own population. They are confronting one another across the great borders, across the great seas. The graphic designers are at wars with who can make the best posters to actually get the population on their side, to increase the entire war effort. Yes, you have all of the conscription, and yes, you have everyone that is going out there on the literal front lines, but everyone, like I said, could be on the front lines. And so you need every single possible person, from the 80-year-olds to the 8-year-olds to the 8-month-olds, maybe not the 8-month-olds, but not to be saying things and not to be disruptive and actually being on the front lines, because you never know. Hitler might be there with his hand over his ear at the time, and I guess that's always what they're playing on, that you never know what you could be doing. So be quiet, be conformative, and just play the part. And yes, you may feel patriotic in your efforts, or you may feel a little bit meek and shy, but at least you'll be doing the right thing, and that's what they want. Or realistically, that's what they need. If they need to be getting through the war effort, they need to be having every single person on their side they can possibly be getting, because one little loose link can unravel the entire chain. All right.
The goal was to resolve the so-called Indian problem. So in 1883, the Canadian government officially instituted the residential school system. By the 1930s, nearly 75% of Indigenous children between the ages of 7 and 15 were forced to attend these schools.
Right.
Unable to return home for months or even years, Indigenous children were often neglected and abused, stripped of their language and culture. Thousands of children died while at residential school. Others went missing, never to be seen again. At least 150,000 First Nations, Métis, and Inuit children were institutionalized over the course of more than 100 years.
Right.
There are approximately 80,000 living survivors. Some have become leaders in their communities, teachers, counselors, commissioners. For many, the trauma of the mental, physical, and sexual abuse they suffered hasn't faded.
Oh, of course not. Of course, nothing like that can change, especially for 100 years. It's not like you were there for 2 months. Like, even for the kids not being able to go home for months or even years, you leave when you're 5 and you return when you're 17. Like, you're not the same person, especially regardless of everything that's happened to you in that time. You're nowhere near the same person. You've lost all your culture. You've lost everything between that, but even just how you've grown up and the experiences that you've been around, the stories that you can now tell in a bad way, horrible things. And of course, this is not the only place in the world it's happened, not even the only time that it has happened. The British do have a massive red streak across their name, but it's not only the British. Across a lot of human history, there has been a lot of this kind of thing happening, just trying to rip people's culture away from them. If you can't just beat them down and wipe them out, you might as well just use them for their manpower and just amalgamate your culture, or not even amalgamate, just completely get rid of them, but just amalgamate them into your culture so you have more numbers. And I guess that's how empires grow, so to say. But does it just be so destructive in the process? And this is a relatively modern example. You feel like so much of this is so medieval, like people just salting the earth and all those kind of expressions. And it feels like that's what they're doing with their culture. Just salt the culture for 100 years. You just rip everything possibly out. The kids, the families, the homes, whatever it may be, just ripping everything apart. And so honestly, I'm kind of surprised that there is 80,000 survivors. That just shows you the sheer scale of the entire thing and how recent it truly is. And for them to even be turning around whatsoever is incredible.
The children and grandchildren of survivors have inherited those wounds. They have persisted, manifesting as depression, anxiety, family violence, suicidal thoughts, substance use. This is called intergenerational trauma, and it can take generations to heal. For Indigenous peoples, that healing can involve a return to the culture that was taken from them. For others, it involves formal acknowledgement of their experiences.
There is no place in Canada for the attitudes that inspired the Indian residential school system to ever prevail again.
For Canada, it means confronting the past and working towards reconciliation. Laws and apologies are necessary to help us move forward, but reconciliation also requires true understanding and empathy to create space where healing is possible.
Restore what must be restored, repair what must be repaired, and return what must be returned. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. The thing that also stuck out to me in there from a time period was the fact that this speech from Stephen Harper, was it? Yeah, Stephen Harper in 2008, pretty much lines up with Kevin Rudd's sorry speech with the Prime Minister of Australia of the time. It must have been 2008, 2007, 2009. I can't remember the exact year, but it's definitely around that time. And I wonder why that is. Like, yes, there's a cultural growth and understanding and an apologetic nature that is now being cultured from all of this destructive energy for so long. But why are both countries doing it around the same time? It's not like the Queen went, "You two have to apologize" all of a sudden. I don't know what that is. Yeah, the 13th of February 2008, and this is 2008, so it is the same year. I thought it was the same year, and I was going, it must be close. And so I'd love to know when exactly. Did she say?
Others, it involves
I don't think she said exactly when it was, but it must be so close. Oh man, whatever it is, the fact that, of course it's better late than never, and these kind of things are so prominent within the history, just like the speeches that they delivered, or at least the Kevin Rudd speech, was, I believe, very well received overall. People did truly believe it. It didn't feel like a facade. It didn't feel fake. It didn't feel forced. It just felt genuine. And of course, it is one person. Yes, that's the leader of the country, but it's one person. Cannot speak for everyone in terms of they don't take on all of the everything, really, of everything that has happened, but they do take the big steps when you have the figure in power, being the Prime Minister in both of these circumstances, taking that stance, or at least acknowledging it to that degree. It's powerful. And from everything that I've ever heard, it was a very, very needed thing. And like they said, the acknowledgement of what has happened. Not trying to say, well, you're liars. Not just completely gaslighting an entire culture that you've already ripped the culture from. No. You're actually going through and reconciling, or at least attempting to reconcile through multiple processes. And that's almost the best you can do. I mean, there are so many other things that can happen, but from a verbal, apologetic point of view, it takes time. There is nothing else you can do in that regard, because it was for 100 years. There was not one day that can make up for 100 years. Yeah, and I just wanted to listen to it again, and I have to also play it again, but this line that she says here is so well written.
To help us move forward. But reconciliation also requires true understanding and empathy to create space where healing is possible.
Oh, it's just so empathetic. Is that the right word? It's just, the fact is, yes, you need the space to heal. Like the sorry day and reconciliation day was merely the start of just giving some room to breathe. The acknowledgement, like I said, that you're not just constantly, continually just whipping them down. Still 100 years later, no. You're acknowledging that that was a problem, and you're acknowledging that they need space and time and energy and resources and everything to heal, and you are willing to hopefully move forward with that promise and actually allow this intergenerational trauma to be slowly weeded out. I mean, it would be amazing to be fast, and slowly is only because of the true depth of what it is, but it's just so necessary to allow this culture to flourish again and not, I guess, like I said, not amalgamate with the culture that you have now created as a country. No. Everyone can have their mosaic. Everyone can be part of Canada as a whole, but you can have your individuality within person, within place, and within people. And that's awesome. That's what makes so many countries so different and so many peoples different. Being able to have all the history that is locked up in the culture, all the knowledge, all the religious elements, whatever it may be, people can actually live out their lives how they want to, instead of just being constantly reminded of what could have been on what has been. And that's where the intergenerational trauma and these kind of videos do shed light on this, and that's an awesome thing in that regard. And it's very, very critical. As Stephen Harper said, it has no place to ever return. And I guess in some places in the world, some elements of these kind of interactions still do occur. And so slowly, if the world can just heal as a whole, from country and people to place to the entire planet, there's no reason why the entire planet couldn't do it eventually. And yes, there will always be some degree of bad eggs in there, but as long as the entire population on the whole is educated and understanding and empathetic and everything like that, moving towards a better future, understanding the history, we can really make sure that this, or I guess actually kind of the last one that we checked out as well, doesn't happen again to the highest possible degree. You make the omelette with the good eggs and completely disregard the bad eggs. And if we can do that, we are on to a winner.